Hello world, it's Dave again, and I got another video for you here, which probably indicated within the title is a sort of question and answer video where someone has been kind enough to write me, and so of course, someone having done that deserves a response. So I'm going to do my best to answer the questions, and yeah, if anybody finds this interesting enough and seems to think that I might be able to answer another question that you might have, you're always welcome to send me an email. My contact is down in the description at any point in time that you want to get a hold of me. So this email is from a fellow Canadian. It's Matthew. I'm not going to try and pronounce the last name. Maybe I could have looked it up. But Matthew is from Burlington, Ontario. So East Coast, I'm West Coast. Not a big problem. And it looks like, Matt, you applied for Interact. And so you're going to have an interview date set in Toronto. Very cool. Interact has been a good company to work for me. So I think you've made a decent choice. That's a good one. Get pretty quickly to the questions here, and they begin. Okay, I wanted to ask you how old you were when you first moved to Japan. So when I first moved here was now basically a year ago, because we're coming up on May, and May will be the exact year that I've been here. I arrived on May 11th. And May 11th will be the year then. And when I arrived, I was 28 years old. And I can say about that, when I talk about my age when I come to Japan, it's actually a little bit strange. It's not unheard of. People around my age and even older come to Japan to teach English. But it's more often the kind of person you would see doing this finishing their college or university degree, and then straight from that, they would come over and have this kind of experience. I just, my life followed a different path, obviously. I was in a relationship, and because of that relationship, there was no way I was going to leave the person that I cared about behind and go over to Japan. But upon the conclusion of that relationship, that's the euphemism we'll use, I thought, you know what? That was always a dream that I had. Why don't I come over? So that's kind of the reason for coming over late. I just had the earlier path where I was like, oh, maybe this will work. But no regret. Well, I have lots of regrets in life. That's how I've learned from things. But it's okay, because even with a regret, you learn something. That's hopefully what a regret does for you. But yeah, so I ended up coming over a little later than people usually would, but you might argue, somebody might argue, I might argue, that there's a number of reasons why that could have been a benefit to me, because I had a little more time to just, think about things, experience a little bit more life. I think anybody can be wise at any age, but I think that you are given a greater advantage, obviously, given more time that you have. I don't abide by the idea that you need to be really old to be wise and intelligent. I think I've met 12-year-olds who have been wiser than any 40-year-old that I've met, just because for whatever reason they've done something with the time that they have. But I'd never deny the fact that with a little more time you inevitably just seem to learn a bit more. So it's good. It's offered me a little bit more perspective, and maybe at the forefront, the most important thing that I can probably say, maybe coming over and being the age that I am, is if you have learned something, you should probably learn to be a little bit more patient with anyone as you get older, and that patience will kind of lead you down a path of least resistance. Not that you don't stand up for yourself, but patience is an incredible virtue for avoiding conflicts which are entirely unnecessary, and also patience grants you a certain degree of objectivity where you can get emotionally bound up in something, and if you're just a little more patient, you realize how it was entirely just based on emotion, how you might have reacted to that situation. And so it's not as though I don't get those peaks in emotion where something shitty might happen where I'd be like, what, that, I'm gonna react strongly, but because I have patience now, I don't react so much in the moment, and I'm able to, like I say, be a bit more objective. And that whether you're traveling to Japan, whether you're living back in the country that you're from, that's a real benefit. Patience will benefit you, and that can come as a result of being older or just figuring it out when you're younger. But wherever I am in my life, I think I have a bit more of it now, and so that's been a big benefit to being the age that I am. Okay, so let's see what we got. I also wanted to ask, did you move with the plan to stay for a couple of years, and did that change over time? That's an excellent question, actually, because when I came to Japan first, I had a really gung-ho attitude. I was like, I'm going to live in Japan for like 6 years, and I'm going to, it seems so appealing to me for a number of different reasons. And then I got over here, and the joke I like to say is my ass stopped talking. And I realized that uprooting your entire life and coming over to do something like this, no matter what your age, is a huge choice. It is a big choice, especially when you're entirely independent. It's not like you're still supported by your family. This is literally all on you that you're doing it. And there's so much change that you go through to begin with. Maybe others more than others. Myself, that's what I felt. And I thought, in the first little while, I was like, wow, I'll make it to the end of the contract, but I think I way overshot things when I said that I would be here for like 6 or 7 years or 3 years or whatever it was. And this is such a commitment. I think one's going to be enough. But, things again calmed down. I got a little bit more used to it. There was a change in just, I think it's good how much is so constantly new and the amount of culture shock that you experience when you first get over here, and is one of the reasons I came. But getting more used to it, absorbing it, and things finally not feeling quite so overwhelming, I came to, I think, a more reasonable, just a more reasonable, less emotionally driven idea of what it was that I was going to do. Where I came over was all emotionally driven. I'm going to be here for 6 years or whatever. And then again, it became emotionally driven when I thought I would only be here for 1 year because I felt, overwhelmed with so much change that was occurring. And once that kind of calmed down, I realized, this is an incredibly valuable experience. I do want to do this for longer than this year that I suddenly found myself saying that I would only be here for. But objectively looking at just how different my life is here and the other things that I want to do with my life, I think it really will be the 2 years that I've kind of set out to do. I mean, I've signed my new contract, so I'm in for another year. But I think that's going to be it. I think 1 year is good, but you really do feel when you get to the end of it, you're like, wow, that went really, really fast. And so it's easy to see how you might want to, but I think at the end of 2, I'm going to be ready to go home. Tons of other people, they stay for longer than that. I think that's really cool. And I mean, you'll only deepen your experience here when you do that, because you're going to speak the language better if you're trying to. You're going to have more relationships, and so your life becomes naturally more entrenched and easier to experience. But it's not for me. It's not for me. For me is to have, like I say, a real life-altering, extended experience while I'm here, but I've decided after everything's calmed down that 2 will be enough. So yes, I did come here with the intention of one thing. Yes, it did change, and then it changed again. So I think don't worry about if you come over to do this job and then you have kind of a bunch of different conflicting feelings about how long you want to do it for, and don't judge yourself if you change. It's a big choice whether to stay or to leave, and nobody should feel guilty in their mind if they choose one or the other. So choose freely. Know that you probably will change your mind a few times, but it's all good. It's just it's naturally a part of the experience. And so finally, kind of jumping along here to the final question of the video, and I've had a few people ask about this. It's an interesting topic, so I'll do my best to give a decent answer. It's I cannot find a video talking about building a relationship or dating someone who's Japanese. Are there difficulties other than the obvious language barrier? Okay, so where to start with this one? So obvious, I think it's funny you say the language barrier is obvious, because I think that's something that people don't necessarily realize is an obvious barrier. I think too many people, when they hear about coming over to Japan, we foreigners get put up like on this relationship pedestal, like, or at least this is what I've seen. I can only speak to my experience, but a lot of people talk about how desirable you will become when you come over to Japan, and that The one thing you need to be careful of is being actually desired at this point, whereas in a Western culture, you may have had a hell of a time to get any kind of women's attention. Well, they're going to be banging at your door constantly, so just don't lose your head at the feast, and that's kind of the direction I've seen people coming at it from, where I'm like, that's you do have a sort of celebrity status, but I think that that's generally overplayed. I think that people do find you that little bit more unique, but not so much that you suddenly have people lining up at your door for a relationship. Maybe that's just me again. I don't know. I'm not particularly looking for one right now, so that can obviously affect things, where we often come in contact with what it is that we're searching for. So maybe if you came over here and that you were hell-bent on having a relationship, you would find one. And I think you might. But I would say that even if you were hell-bent, it won't just fall into your lap in that way that people describe. And like you've said, that language is an obvious barrier is one that more people should pay attention to. Because it is. You come over here, and if you come over here with that idea, the majority of people in Japan, I'm being sarcastic, obviously, but they speak Japanese, and not all of them speak English. I think it's impressive, the amount of people that do, and do to some extent. I guess that's what I should say. Almost everyone in Japan speaks English, but we're talking a massive range, like some people speak a few words. Almost no one speaks zero English, but there's a great range. So, okay, let's progress through the ideas I'm trying to develop. So come over. You can expect some kind of celebrity status, but not quite as much as you might think. And that will also depend on the sort of environment you're in, whether it's in a city or in a rural area. A rural area, more traditional, and there are less people to meet. And so you would see, just not being in quite so many social settings, you might not get as much as that. Although I guess I'm kind of rambling, though. If you're in a city, being a foreigner is less impressive because there's probably more foreigners, so that balances out in its own way. Let's move along. I guess I'm just offering ideas. We'll see whatever direction that they go. There are definitely cultural differences where, for example, I go to this snowboard trip, and I got these couple of girls hanging out with me after we've gone snowboarding, and we're in my room. And we're going to sleep that night, and I said, because there's a futon and a bunch of different sheets and stuff, and I said, so do I just like take that down out of the cupboard there, and I like set it up with the sheets and stuff? And they were like, yeah, that's basically it. And I turned my back on those crafty women for 1 second, and then when I look back again, they're setting the bed up for me. I was like, oh man, you guys don't need to do that. And they kind of gave me this look like, yes, we do, which was interesting. That's not even speaking necessarily about a relationship, but it's a type of relationship between a male and a female there, and you can see how things are already a little different, and each culture has things that you might enjoy more or less. But I enjoy how in Japan there does seem to be a little more of a woman is willing to look after her man. I'm not discounting all Western women. Women do this, but it's more, or it's less of that kind of Western mentality of like, what have you done for me lately? And I'm an empowered woman in a modern world, as opposed to just, you're a man and I'm a woman and I want to help you and you want to help me, and I might have sort of traditional things that I do for you. Say like setting your bed, or it's not considered, high treason if you want your wife to be a good cook. Like it is a little more accepted in their culture that yes, a woman would cook for her man. And I know I'm treading on thin ice here, and I don't want to ever say that somebody has to be one particular thing, but if you are an individual who enjoys those more traditional roles, then what's wrong with enjoying that aspect of their society if a woman is happy to do so? I guess it's just kind of the thing where this is going a little rant where I could talk about my home, talk about Canada, where it was almost like you get the impression with the way that women have continued to be empowered that if a woman wanted to be a stay-at-home mother with her children, as opposed to having a really aggressive career as well, that woman was doing a disservice to women, that she wouldn't want to go out and continue her career, and by doing that she was pigeonholing women into an old role. And I think that that's just crazy. I think that that's a wonderful thing if your woman wants to stay at home and raise her children. And I'm not saying that a woman shouldn't be able to go out and have a career and really actively pursue that. But if she does want to follow these more traditional things, that in the same token she not be judged. It's kind of like a pendulum swinging back and forth. And it just seems that as we move forward, it always overcorrects. We always go to one extreme to the other extreme while trying to find whatever reasonable common ground that there might be. And in Japan, in defense of the West, I would say maybe the pendulum is still too far over in these traditional roles. But if you do like something like that you're going to be in great shape here, because it's something, especially if you're more in the countryside, that you're going to find. So if you enjoy traditional roles, then that's something you can really enjoy out of a Japanese relationship. And even in the less intimate relationships, but just the relationships I've had with women here, it's really, really cool. I really, really like that. But you asked specifically about difficulties, I guess. Then I'll move on to my next point where, I made the point that there are cultural differences. You need to be aware of that. And there's a language barrier that is not nearly appreciated enough in getting to know women while you're here. I would then move into the idea that just simply, regardless of culture, regardless of anything, we forget how individual people are. And so I wanted to talk about these broader things that you might be able to see, but then never forget that every single man and woman on this planet has entirely unique genetic code and is entirely their own person. And so to say that there might be a particular problem with dating a Japanese person, I think beyond your issue with whether they're more or less traditional, it's just going to depend on the person. You're going to get into a relationship with somebody here a little easier, with a little more difficulty maybe than at home, but then it falls back to that same thing no matter wherever you are in the world. What kind of connection do you have to that individual? And I guess this becomes almost like a movie of me talking about relationships. The best thing that you can do for somebody else in a relationship, and this is for anywhere in the world, this is universal, is be happy yourself. And, I'm going to hit all the cliches here, but you can't love anybody else until you love yourself. And it's remarkable how naturally and easily you can enter into relationships when that part of yourself is complete. When you are a happy and whole person, you're going to find yourself in a relationship that works far sooner, and you're also going to be able to identify when a relationship is just simply unhealthy for you. Because if you feel confident, you know that you're just generally a loving, caring person, that if you feel like you need to walk away from something, you won't feel so torn up by it. You might feel, the obvious regret that you should have if you do have feelings for this person, but you can feel more confident about the decisions that you do make. So, yes, in terms of problems that you might have, it'll only arise from the individual and yourself. And before worrying about any other person that you're going to get in a relationship with, worry about yourself. Am I happy? Am I pursuing the things that I'm interested in? And almost like some unseen force, if you take care of that, I think you very quickly end up with people who are better for you, will be more long-lasting, and just an overall better experience. Certainly not a rule, but I would say as an average goes that it seems to be true. Just doing anecdotes, like when I've been definitely, on the sadder end of my life, I'll run into people who seem more negatively aligned, and when I'm doing a little better, I just seem to run into those people that I have a more positive experience with, like I'm saying. But I don't want to drone on. I don't want to repeat things. I don't want to. I just don't want to start to regurgitate information over and over and over again when I feel like I've made my points concerning it. Let's do a recap, though. Let's do a recap of what I basically said so I can try and make it clear. Let's move through them. Okay, so be aware of your celebrity status, but realize that it probably won't be as much as you think. Be aware of the language barrier. That's always underappreciated. The more that you know the language, you will be a million times off better. Then into the actual relationship for like individual problems that I might see. Nothing beyond what's traditional in the country, that you either like it or you don't like it. And then realize it's an individual. Be happy yourself. You'll be in good shape. And that's the end of that. This has been a long enough video, coming up to like 20 minutes here. If you've gotten to the end, that's impressive. You listen to me drone for 20 minutes. I appreciate that. If you enjoy, please like, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. I think I mentioned at the beginning, if you have any questions, my email is down below. And I welcome any questions because it gives me video fodder to be able to get a little more creative on my channel. And for Matt, I hope that answers your questions, or at least provided you with 20 minutes of entertainment. And like I like to say, until we meet again next time, world, thanks for tripping with Dave. Ciao for now. Peace.